Northern New York Community Podcasts, stories from the heart of our community. Thank you for joining us. We have another great Northern New York Community Podcast to share with you. I'm your host, Max Del Signor. Dr. David Van Edenham, a longtime orthopedic surgeon and devotee to medical practices in the North Country, is here with us. He'll tell us a little bit about how he came to Watertown and how healthcare has changed in the region over the last few decades. We'll also dive into the legacy of a well-known civic organization and its historic identity in downtown Watertown. And finally, we'll talk about why philanthropy in general is such an important engine for our communities. Dr. Van, appreciate you being here with us.
Good morning.
It's safe to say that a good part of your heart is in Michigan. You were born there, you went to college there, got your medical degree in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, the town where you grew up, and when you knew you wanted to pursue a medical career.
I grew up in Muskegon, Michigan, a fairly large city right on the shore of Lake Michigan. I went to public schools in Muskegon, and after my senior year, went to a small college in Holland, Michigan called Hope College, where I pursued a pre-medical career. It seems to me I always wanted to be a physician. There was no epiphany. It was just something I always wanted to do. And I remember wanting that, desiring that at a very young age. But in any event, I went to Hope College, and then following that 4-year period, I enrolled at the medical school in Ann Arbor, and spent the next 10 years in the Ann Arbor area pursuing my education and my specialty as an orthopedic surgeon.
Now, Hope College is something that has a very close connection with your family. Your mother was the dean of women there, correct, for a period of time?
Yes, not when I was enrolled, fortunately, but no, she came on board after I had left and was a house mother and then became dean of women at Hope College until she retired. But it was a wonderful experience. It's a small college. It's a church-related college founded by the Reformed Church of America. They also have a seminary, Western Theological Seminary, that is closely associated with the college. So part of my education had a Christian orientation at that time, and I know you're interested in philanthropy and this topic today, and I think that upbringing in the Christian church and the teachings of tithing, giving back, certainly has influenced me throughout my life.
You know, your father was also quite accomplished, being a state senator in Michigan for a few years. And
yes, I was in a household that was steeped in politics. My father was at that time, when he was the youngest state senator elected in Michigan. He was 26, I believe, and he became the Republican chairman of the Senate within a few years. And I remember as a Republican in a Democratic era, he won during the Roosevelt landslide. So we had to have some popularity across lines.
Now, you were in the Navy for a few years as well, correct?
I was in residency, which is the program that is set up to train you in an individual specialty. After your medical school graduation, I spent a year as an intern and a year as a first-year surgical resident in at the Wayne County General Hospital in Wayne, Michigan, not too far from Ann Arbor. I then went back to the University Hospital in Ann Arbor and spent 3 years in my orthopedic residency. In the middle of my last year, I was drafted into the Vietnam War, and I was assigned the Navy. And fortunately, the naval folks let me complete at least my last year there. So I was fully trained when I left and joined the Navy in 1968. I spent a couple of months at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and then was given orders to report to the Naval Hospital at Great Lakes, Illinois. And I spent the next year and a half, or almost 2 years, at that facility as an orthopedic surgeon. We were very busy. We had a relatively new hospital, and we had an active in-hospital population of about 80 and an outpatient clinic of over 800. So we kept very busy for a few years while I was there.
In a lot of ways, that experience kind of helped shape your professional career just because of how many things were happening. What was that experience like in the day-to-day being at Great Lakes?
Well, it was very memorable seeing the terrible tragedies of warfare and terrible injuries, and particularly in all fields, but also in my field, because it affects people's limbs, their ability to ambulate and so forth. It was a great learning experience for me, not only philosophically about war and what it means, but also the terrible, terrible wounds and suffering that many of our young men have gone through. It was a very tough couple of years.
Now, there were a couple of local doctors who were graduates from Michigan who in many ways may have been the ones that, were the ones that they brought you to Watertown.
Well, when I left the residency, I was planning to stay and practice in Ann Arbor. But when I was drafted, we decided to hold off on any definite plans. And during the last year of my military career, I was called by Dr. Walker Heap and Dr. James Fish that were practicing here in Watertown, and they wanted another partner. Both Walker and Dr. Fish and also Dr. Stover that was involved, all trained in Ann Arbor and were well known and well thought of. So we came out here and to Watertown, I think in the spring of 1968, and met Dr. Heap, Dr. Fish, Dr. Stover, and then decided to come here to practice in 1968 in July.
What were those first memories of Watertown?
I think it was in March, banks of snow, but the snow was sort of dirty and melting. And it was a pretty dreary trip as I came into Watertown. But I soon realized that this area was a wonderful place to live and had a wonderful bunch of people that live here and work here, and I've been very happy that I made that decision.
How did your practice and medical procedures evolve over time through the eras, starting around that 1968 to going through 40 years of practice?
Well, as I look back, many of the things that I subsequently did, I was not trained to do during residency. For an example, total hip joints, total knee joints, these procedures weren't done until after I got here. So this required going to special courses to learn the procedure, and it just showed to me how the practice of medicine continues to change and evolve. It's very important to get a good basic background in medicine, which I received at the University of Michigan. but you still need continuing medical education, and you still need to participate in clinics, go to meetings. So it's a constant evolving process that never ends.
How has the accessibility to research and information, how did that change over time? You know, if you had conferences or other resources you could tap into early on, there seems to be more accessibility these days. How did you see it change?
Well, I see it change in the telecommunication industry. A lot of meetings now we can attend through a teleconference rather than having to travel somewhere to a meeting. So it makes the learning experience more accessible. Everything in the medical world is a constant evolving change, and I think they're doing everything they can to make sure the individual practitioner is made aware of changes and is up to date.
So how did the community and medical care providers prepare for Fort Drum's prominent return or expansion in the mid-1980s?
Well, that was a major period of time here in Watertown. We had two hospitals. I was involved on a few committees that addressed some of these situations and planning that went into them. I remember primarily the interest here in Watertown was the fact that we had no military base that had a hospital, so they had to use the hospitals here in our community. We also had some meetings discussing what type of insurance would be used to cover the cares and so forth. But it was a major happening, and to some degree there were some very significant problems that had to be solved. And I thought the overall transition was done really quite well. We had a lot of fine leaders in the community, both military and locally, that made the transition smooth and maintained, I felt, good medical care to the soldiers and their families, as well as maintaining the care of the community as a whole.
One of the things perhaps our younger audience, as they listen to your story, is the idea of having two hospitals in Watertown and practically within a mile of each other. What was it like to have two really good medical care institutions in one city?
It had definitely advantages and definitely some disadvantages. Competition is always good. We wanted to make sure they were delivering good care as best they could, and that part of the competition is, I think, worthwhile. Some of the disadvantages I thought were mainly sort of selfishly to the physician, particularly as I looked at it in my field. We had two emergency rooms, and when you're on call, you only have so many people or personnel that can take call at one time. It was sometimes a little hard to cover both hospitals. We did it, and I think we did it well. But that would be, say, one of the disadvantages, but that's my selfish look at it. But for the patient, I don't think there's much downside, because I think the competition was good, and everybody wanted to give excellent care, and they certainly tried to do that.
Going back to you personally, what was your favorite or best procedure that you looked forward to the most as a surgeon?
The ones that are easy to do, I guess.
Such as?
No, some procedures obviously are done more quickly and easily without risk of any serious side effect or complication. Others can be very challenging, not only in planning the surgery, but unexpected findings at the time of the surgery, where you must perhaps change your plan and do something a little different. I think one of the most patient-received surgical successes are total joints. say total hips and total knees, very painful conditions when they have painful arthritic problems. But the surgery for that problem normally is very effective, and the patient is very, very happy to get relief from their preoperative discomfort. There are some other procedures that I've done that we do as an orthopedic surgeon that are very gratifying as well. The nice thing about orthopedics is that we treat all ages of patients. We treat newborns, and we treat geriatric patients, of course, for all different types of orthopedic problems. So it's been a great field, I feel, for people interested in a medical career.
Take me for a minute inside the mental approach, the preparation before you go into a procedure and begin to operate. What was the mentality you had before you went in to perform one of these procedures?
The most important thing is the safety of the patient, and you assess the patient's overall health. There may be some comorbidities or other medical problems that the patient has that might have to be tuned up or approached or treated before you do your surgery. Most of our surgery, except for trauma, is elective, so we have time to work up a patient and correct any medical problems that might be detrimental to a general anesthetic or our particular procedure. That's what we generally do when we approach a case.
Let's transition to another institution. We'll talk about the Black River Valley Club. It really does have a special meaning for you, and the club itself just played an important role in the city of Watertown in its heyday. What are some of your favorite memories and times at the club?
Well, when I came to Watertown in the late 60s, 1968, the Downtown Black River Valley Club was a club that had a lot of the community leaders that were members, and I was invited down one evening to have dinner and meet members, and I was very impressed with the cross-section of who I met, not only my own colleagues in my field, but in the business community, in the educational community, the attorneys, all people getting together for a social relaxation. I was very much interested in joining, and fortunately I was asked to be a member, and I found my association with the club to be very relaxing and rewarding intellectually, because I had a chance to meet business leaders in the community that otherwise I probably would not have met. And I thought it was a great part of my life here in Watertown.
Now, the club is transitioning now to becoming the Northern New York Philanthropy Center. What are your thoughts about what the building will symbolize and become in Watertown?
I hated to see the club close. However, the building itself is a landmark, I think, in our downtown community. And I think the project now that is being constructed and planned is a wonderful thought to continue to help our community in all avenues, particularly in philanthropy. And what better a place to do it in is in that structure, which remains a very handsome building in downtown Watertown.
Now, your service outside of work extended to many, as you mentioned before, boards and committees. You're still very active. For example, you're still on the board for the Children's Home of Jefferson County. You started a muscular dystrophy clinic at Mercy at the time. Even did some medical staffing for the Watertown Red and Black, the local semi-pro football team. As you look back at that level of volunteering and all that you did, why were those activities important to you?
I guess it's my own mantra or personality, but I've always had an interest in things other than my own professional ideas and career. And I didn't really feel an obligation to do these things, but I had the training to do what I do and to help people and in the community that were in need of help and some guidance. And I felt I was not really obligated, but I wanted to do it, and I enjoyed doing it. I volunteered and did all the Watertown High School football games, and then of course the red and black games, and did get involved. We started the muscular dystrophy clinic, as you mentioned, at Mercy Hospital. That's where we started it. And I've been associated with the Children's Home of Jefferson County since 1970, I believe, and also been involved with Jefferson Rehab and have done some consulting work there.
Given your interest in being able to apply your strengths to a lot of these volunteer activities, as you reflect again, what are some of those philanthropic values that you feel are most important?
I guess I don't think of it so much as philanthropic. I just feel that I have the ability to do these things, and I just feel I should do these things. I think that perhaps goes back to my upbringing. It goes back to, I think, my faith. These are all factors that are involved.
You were fortunate enough to work with your son, Peter, for the last few years of your professional career. What was that experience like to be able to share the practice with him?
That was wonderful. Very proud. Peter has done a wonderful job. I think his training certainly far exceeded what I did in my training. And he did this all on his own. He, first time around, he went to Hope College, but he had to delay his medical school acceptance for a couple of years. But in that period, he got a master's degree, and then from that point on, did wonderful work in his training, and it's been wonderful to work with him here in Watertown. I think we're very fortunate that he came here and is continuing to practice here.
Another important part of your family legacy is a scholarship that's at the Northern New York Community Foundation that honors your wife, Ellie, who passed away 3 years ago. How important is that scholarship to you, to your family, and being able to honor Ellie in that way?
Well, it's been absolutely wonderful, and this all sort of started spontaneously by some friends of my wife that had played golf with her, and it's been very well received and supported by a number of very generous sponsors in the community, and Northern New York Community Foundation and WNY TV. The support has been really quite overwhelming, and we hope to continue the golf tournament in the near future. The proceeds of the event support the Northern New York Community Foundation and a scholarship that we give out to the students that apply. It also gives money to the Alec Baldwin Cancer Fund as well as the Governor Cancer Fund. So hopefully we can continue this and continue to support the folks that I've mentioned.
In many ways, philanthropy plays a vital role in the community's overall development, and regions always have challenges. How important do you feel is, or how important do you think philanthropy is to the North Country's future as you look ahead?
As I look behind, I see what philanthropy has done. And as I look ahead, I hope that philanthropy continues to keep doing what they've done. There are a lot of things here in Watertown that we all sort of take for granted. that are here because of philanthropy and the generosity of a lot of our residents. You know, as we look around our community today, we see a lot of need for improvement, and there's certainly many areas where philanthropy could be very beneficial in solving problems and improving lifestyle and improving the educational opportunities that we have. But I think it's going to be an ongoing process. That's why I think that this plan of the Northern New York Community Foundation of having a visible site that can be sort of the beacon for this type of activity in the future.
Well, Dr. Van, you've taken good care of this community for more than 4 decades, continue to do so. Thank you so much for sharing your story and time with us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Special thanks to our partners on this production, WPBS TV and the Northern New York Community Foundation. And finally, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Please join us again for another community story on the Northern New York Community Podcast. Northern New York Community Podcast, stories from the heart of our community.